So this course is we customize in such a way, if in day-to-day scenarios, right, if any network engineer or security engineer which is working in a production environment, right, so this entire course is going to help you out how to make that connectivity, how to make that security up on that cloud environment, right? So that's what we customize this course according to our networking and the security environment part, right? So we are the class timing we are going to tell you in a while. I mean, that you can get it from others, right? And these are the contact numbers. You can reach out to us on these contacts for any queries regarding that course or any queries regarding related to that course environment. So if I'll move further here, right? So these things which we are going to cover, right? So during this course, right, what we are going to cover, what will be the agenda of that, apart from covering that our training and seeing that practical environment, right? So with that part, we are going to cover it, all that things which are saying it here. So we are going to cover that 50 hours of the training here, right? 50 hours of the training we are going to cover it there. Apart from that, right, apart from having this 50 hours of training, we are also going to see provide you the lifetime interview support. So if, let's say if you guys facing any interviews in the coming days, right, after this training gets completed, right, and you have any doubts related to the topic which we are covering it, right, or any topic which you want to see it there in that Azure environment, right, so you can reach out to us and we will going to provide you that interview support on this part. Apart from that, also we are going to provide you that study material that you that's going to help you out on your day-to-day things on that Azure topics, Azure concepts, which will bring you more in a better position to face that interviews, right? So that study materials also we are going to provide it there. Apart from that, that recorded live sessions, right? So whatever the classes you are going to attend it, right? Let's say in any case you being skip that class or you're not able to join it there, right, and you want to revise that training session, right, so that also we are going to cover that while the training. You're going to see that recording video for all that steps even, right, and all after all these things steps, right, so you're also going to we are going to help you out to set up your own lab, right? So as soon as like I'm going to do some practical, right, and in a parallel you guys want to do that parallel, practical, right, or after that courses get completed, or after that particular session on that day class gets completed, right, and you want to do that practical, so I'm going to help you out to set up that your own cloud on that Azure environment, right? How you can do that day-to-day practice, how can you can cover the topics which I cover it, right, and then do your live troubleshootings, do your live setups on the cloud environment. That also we are going to cover it here. Apart from that, this week is going to be a weekend classes. We are going to schedule these classes on the Saturday and Sunday, right? So timing, as I said, we're going to update you in a while. But yeah, this is going to be a weekend classes on that one. We are going to see more of the stuffs which we are covering it, lesser focus on the theoretical part, and the majority of the things we are going to cover it's going to focus on the practical steps, and that practical is also going to cover that in day-to-day scenarios, right, in a production environment, what kind of scenes, what kind of issues company can see, right, and as a being an engineer on that cloud environment, right, whether it's a security or the cloud engineer, right, what's your responsibility, how to handle that issues there, that all stuffs, that all practical issues we are going to discuss is in this course. As I said, we are also going to cover that mock interview with every students in a few days. Let's say after completing that course, you want to ask a mock interview so that you can have that practice done before attending the real interviews there, right? So you can reach out to us. You can reach out to us, and we are going to provide you that mock interview support. We're going to set up a kind of mock interviews, which will make you in a more confident position to attend your real interviews there. So this is all things we're going to cover it while covering our training session. You're going to see all the steps also cover it there. Going further, so as I said, right, initially we are going to cover that fundamental steps. We are touching the base on that fundamental, like which supposed to be a major concept knowledge on that one. We are going to cover that fundamental steps there, and then majority of the steps we are going to focus on the network and the security part, right? So let me take you to that concepts on the course content, what we are going to cover it there.
Guys, one small update. So like meeting is full. So I'm just went on the live on YouTube. So I will share these live streams. Okay. But you can continue.
Sure, thank you. And we do have our YouTube channels. We do have our own websites, right? And where you can get that all the training videos, right, which we are going to cover. You can see all the trainings gets uploaded here, right? It's a bunches of courses which we are offering it here. And if you want to purchase any of them, right, you can go ahead and purchase that trainings from here also. It's all available in that our website, that learn.sianet.com. Apart from that, if you want to see our level of teaching also, we have these two YouTube videos. You can get all that videos related to your networking and the security concepts. We upload that videos on day to day, on regular basis on our YouTube channel. So this is our one YouTube channel. We do have another one on the same name, and you'll find that other stuffs on that YouTube channel also. Yeah. So if you want to see that more, explore that, you can go ahead and do that exploration on that websites and the YouTube channel. Now let me bring it back on that content on that training. So as I said, right, so these are that numbers and that stuffs which you can reach out for any related queries on that admissions and stuffs, right? And then it's going to be more on the network in the security environment, and little bit we are focusing on that admin and the fundamental. Now, how we are expecting that, right? Once that basic trainings, we are going to cover it there, right? You're going to have that realistic environment. You're going to see that production environment issues, which we are covering it here. Along with that, a person should get more familiar with the networking and the security aspects on that Azure cloud, right? So you're going to get the more skills on the networking and that security. But however, that concerns where, so when we deploy any resource, right, I'm going to cover that admin part also a bit, going to touch the base on that admin part, but the majority of the steps is going to focus on the network and the security. So prerequisites, we are just expecting that you guys should have that knowledge on that networking, right? If you have that CCNA level knowledge, right? So let's say if person is having a CCNA level of knowledge, what is that IP address, how we can do that, what is source IP address or destination IP address, right? And the protocol, port, all the steps. If you guys have that basic knowledge of the CCNA, that will work for us, right? We'll be able to move this course further. Basic knowledge of the CCNA is only required here. Now, what we are going to cover it here, as a part of the course session, right? What we are going to cover it here. So as I said, right, I'm going to start our training with the basic steps of that cloud environment. So startingly, I'm going to cover it. What is cloud computing, right? What exactly that cloud computing? What is that key characteristics of the cloud as an Azure provider, right? All we are going to see that, right? What is the benefit of using that Azure cloud, right? Nowadays, I mean, everybody is moving to that Azure, right? Or everybody is moving to AWS on the cloud infra, right? So what is that benefit that organization quickly moving that on that resources on the cloud instead of going for the on-prem? So you're going to see that what is the benefit that Azure is going to provide it there. And then we are definitely going to see the different cloud service model. What is that infrastructure as in service, platform as in service, and software as in service. All that we are going to cover it there. Basic as in fundamental steps, I said we'll be going to cover that availability zone to provide that high availability of our resources, reason wise replication which Azure provides. All that steps you're going to see it there also. Then reason and the difference between reason and the availability zone, how we are going to differ that, what does availability zone means in Azure cloud, and what this Azure reason is, in which all reason Azure provide their services, right? Fault tolerance also and high availability. If you're deploying any resources on the Azure cloud, right, how we're going to make sure that it's highly available, right? In case of any issues happen to one region, right, how my resource will still be available to different region. So that high availability, fault tolerance also we are going to see it there. Then geo reason, Azure geo based reason, and why that is important to follow your compliance. That's also we are going to see it there. In our demos, in our course section, we are going to cover all that steps here. If I'll move further here, right, we're going to see that how that Azure provide that network isolation, right, and the segmentation. So if you have that environment, if you have your dev environment to be deployed on the Azure cloud, right, or you also want to deploy that stage environment, and you also want to deploy your prod environment also. So how, what mechanism Azure is going to provide you to segregate your environment from dev to prod and prod to stage, right? That segregations and then isolation of the network, right? We are also going to say it in our Azure environment. And then what will be the shared responsibility, right? So if let's say if you're managing any environment, right, if you're managing any environment on that on-prem, or you're managing any environment on the cloud infra, right, what you supposed to manage, right? Being a customer, what you supposed to be managed, and what Azure cloud is going to manage on your behalf. And whatever the services you're going to opt it, right, you need to pay that cost for that one. So that's what we are going to see it in a shared responsibility model, right? And what infra, what platform, and what software as a service Azure is going to provide you, Azure is going to cover it, and then what should be the your responsibility there. If I'll going further here, then we'll touch the base on that governance and the secure governance and the management, in which we are going to cover it like we are going to cover it at ARM template, which is Azure Resource Manager, how we can deploy the resource on that Azure, right? And that deployment of that resource, right? How we can automate that stuff using that template file, right? So Azure provide a inbuilt feature, right? Azure Resource Manager. We all know that Terraform is also there, but Terraform is third-party tool. Azure Resource Manager, which is ARM template, right? It's getting provided by Azure itself, and we can utilize that Azure from that portal also, right? How we are going to see that, how we can maintain that, how we can create that template. So we can automate the stuffs. We can do that multiple resource deployment, right? Let's say we need to deploy 50 storage account, or we need to deploy 50 virtual machines, right? So with the help of ARM template, how can I do that, right? So that also we are going to see it there. After that, right, other stuffs which you are going to see it here, like ARM template to automate the resource, Azure CLI also, the difference between ARM template and the Azure CLI, right? When I say I'm going to automate my resource using that ARM template, right? The same stuff I can do via Azure CLI. Then why I'm going to use that ARM template, not the Azure CLI? So that difference between these two, right? In which scenario you can go and use the ARM template, and which scenario you can use that Azure CLI. We are going to see that. Then managing your resources on the role base is very mandatory, and every organization is following that, right? We are going to touch base on that RBAC also. We'll see that network and the security we can provide on the RBAC, right? How we can use that security component to implement the RBAC rule also there, right? Compliance and the security governance to follow that security policies as per the industry standard, as per the industry practice. We're going to see that all stuff. Azure policy also. So let's say you deployed any VM, right? Or you deployed any resources inside that Azure environment, and you want that it should follow some pattern, right? Just for an example, I'm saying it, I want to deploy one virtual machine in an East, right? And I want that virtual machine should get latest uh, latest antivirus. It should have no vulnerabilities, right? So I can create that policies and then implement that. So all that steps you're going to see it there. Blueprint also, you're going to see that what blueprint will do and how that it works on that. Azure Advisor is also a very good tool which is provide us for the recommendation and the security vulnerabilities, right? If any vulnerabilities comes across the environment, right, I can use that Azure Advisor or Azure Defender for Cloud to automate my to remove the vulnerabilities from my environment there, right? So that's what we are going to cover it there. And then major component which comes it here is like networking, right? Azure networking and then advanced networking. So here we are going to see that what is that VNet, right? What is VNet, how we can uh, key component of the VNet, how we can segregate our environment, right? The segmentation, the minimum layer of security is that network security group, VNet pairing, expressed out, as you said, right? I'm going to cover what is expressed out, how we can differ it from the VPN gateway and that connectivity, right? Since the expressed out is like hard to provide that practical here, right? But the theoretical part, I'll show you how we can create that circuit on that cloud environment, and then how that connectivity and all the steps can be set up on that expressed out. Then VPN gateway, virtual network design, what is that hub and spoke kind of topologies, like all environment is all every organization following that hub and spoke of topologies, right? Let's say this is my one VNet in the hub VNet, right? And I want that child VNet to be communicate with each other, right? And how can I pair that with each other? How can I make them to be in a sync with each other? So that's what we are going to see it in a hub VNet communication, VNet to VNet communication. Also, we are going to see it, right? We are going to see the multi-region VNet deployment. All those things we are going to see it in a networking, Azure networking. And then after, right? Then after moving further here, as I said, right, Azure firewall, someone asked that, are we going to see that firewall deployment also there? Yes, we do going to see that firewall deployment. We are going to see that what firewall capabilities Azure is providing, right? What is the difference between stateful and the stateless firewall, right? Because Azure firewall provide both features, stateful and the stateless. DDoS protection also, right? In case of any distributed denial of services happening to your environment, right? How you can protect your Azure environment by paying upfront cost to that Azure, right? So DDoS, also we are going to see it, right? And then we are going to deploy that Azure firewall also with public IP so that our application can be hosted behind that public IP, right? And then we're going to see that traffic routing and the load balancing, right? Application gateway, it's a L7 load balancer. We are going to see that, right? How we can make the difference between, so there are L7 load balancer also there, and then there are uh, what I say, L7 is also there, and then there are L4 load balancer is also there, right? So all that, how we can see that, how we can make them difference from each other, we are going to see that, right? And then it's come that WAF also, which is web application firewall. How can I protect my environment for that OAPS open web attack, right? The different kind of attack like SQL injections or uh, any fragmentation attack which is happening to my environment, right? I'm going to cover that web application firewall, and we'll take you each and every terminologies which is needed for that WAF also. Then private endpoint and secure network integration. If I want my every traffic, right, any past services which needs to be communicated only with that Microsoft backbone network, that also I'm going can do it using that private endpoint. So I'm going to cover that also. Private endpoint, how we can secure our different pass based services using that private endpoint. I'm going to touch a base on the virtual LAN also, which is kind of hub and spoke also. So all that connectivity can be established with the virtual LAN. That also we're going to see difference between service endpoint and the private endpoint. In which scenarios we can use that service endpoint, and where exactly we can use that private endpoint. That also I'm going to cover it here. If I'll move it here, right, as a part of the compliance and the security, which is like our one of the component as a main component of this course also, right, we are going to see it, right, this Azure Security Center, now we call it as a Microsoft Defender for Cloud, right? How we can monitor our resources on the Azure environment, right? How we are going to see that we can improve that. So whenever you do any deployment on the Azure, right, Azure provide you a score, and as per the Azure recommendation, it should be 80%. That score should be above 80%, right? So how we can achieve that score above 80%, right? Using that security center recommendations and then advisor recommendation. And then Azure Sentinel, it's a SIEM tool, right? So how we can configure that SIEM tool, how we can detect that any SIEM attack which is happening it to our environment, right? Or how we can automate that Sentinel attack using that logic app. That steps you are going to see it there. Threat detection, threat prevention, how that Sentinel is going to work it there. And then it's come the Azure Key Vault again. Access, we are going to see that in Azure Key Vault, which is again going to be a PaaS-based service, how we can manage our security certificate and then secrets inside that Key Vault, right? Then we are seeing that HSM-based secrets, and then how we can enable that MFA, which is like very necessary in nowadays, right? To enable protect your environment with that MFA. How we can do that MFA protection, AD identity, right? All that's related to the security center and that uh, our governance part. We are going to cover it here. Then we are also going to touch base on that data security and storage part, right? As I said, right, we are also going to cover a bit on that admin fundamental, and then majority on that security at the network. So there also we are going to see it like how we can encrypt our data at rest, and how can I encrypt my data when it's moving it, right? How can I store secure my storage account using that private endpoint capabilities, right? Because storage account is a pass-based service, right? It won't get any IPs and subnet in it, right? So how can I use that private endpoint to complete my storage account? So if I'll go it further here, right, there comes like Azure Compute and Network Security again. To go on more depth on the network part here, we are also going to cover it like uh, the best practices, the industry best practices that we are following it to deploy that virtual machine. NSG also, just in time also, we are going to cover it. I'm going to tell you a brief discussion about the Kubernetes also. It's a container-based service, how we can deploy container services on that Kubernetes, right? And how we can see that all that container based services, Docker based environment, we can have it in our environment. And more important, we are going to touch that networking and the security best practices, right? So let's say if someone reaching out to you and they are saying it, I need to deploy the Kubernetes cluster to your Azure environment, right? That AKS services in your environment. How can I secure that? How can I make them networking configured? So I'm going to cover that steps also. Then control traffic on that AKS part, AD integration with that secure access, that also we are going to cover it. All that topic which I'm showing it here. Then also going to touch a base on that functionless computing, which is that Azure function, like how Azure is providing you a complete platform. You just need to have your code ready, and then everything within a seconds, right? That entire application, entire website is get ready using that Azure function. That also we are going to cover it. Azure API management, how you can make some tweaks on your inbound and outbound applications, in inbound and outbound requests, which is receiving on that API management, right? How you can do that API management tweaks on your request that you are saying it there, right? And then implication of using serverless function in Azure, that also we are going to cover it there, right? So if I'll take it, right, majority of the steps we are covering it with the Azure environment here, and then it's the AD and that access management. We are going to see the different uh, parameters which is needed to make that on-prem to that Azure AD. Azure provide a very good tool which is called AD Connect. How we can use that to sync our AD with that on-prem to that Azure Infra, right? And then PIM is also there. If I want to make someone an elevated access, how can I provide that PIM access? B2C, business to business and business to customer, also we can create it there using the Azure. And I can run that user flow. And that user flow provide that entire things like from your AD to that sign in, sign out capabilities using that Azure AD account. Then backup as a part of anything happen to your primary reason, right? Let's say you are having that reason in a east US and you're running everything, your every application is running it here, right? If in case some disaster happened to this east US and this user becomes down, you won't be able to access this east US region now. Then how can I make my application still accessible? Then DR and DC capabilities of that we are going to see there, how we can implement that replication between these two, right? In case of anything happen to primary reason, my secondary reason will come in a rescue and my application should work as supposed to be work. That also we are going to cover it in all that redundancies and VPN gateways and that DR capabilities, high availability. We are going to see it there. We're going to touch a bit on that monitoring, automation, and security logging also. So majority of that, how we can store. So any resource which are deploying it on the cloud environment, right? How we are going to secure our environment? How any audit log, right? Anything happened to my Azure infra? Anything anybody is trying to make any changes there? How can I log that request there, right? And how can I see that log? So for that, Azure provide very good services, which we call it as a log analytics workspace. That also we are going to see it. We can configure that Azure monitor to configure the different threshold, right? Different dynamic and static base alerts, which we are going to see how we can configure that, right? Basis on my environment, right? Let's say my virtual machine is capable of taking that request only, or my storage account will able to see this much of the request in this duration of the time, right? So that customized logs or customized, you can say, alerts, I can configure it on my Azure monitor, right? And then network watcher is very good tool. I mean, how can I watch what stuff is happening on my network environment, and how can I diagnostic using that network monitor, right? Then moving further here, I mean, auditing and the traffic monitoring logs we are also going to cover in a while, like in our course, like Azure Sentinel. If you are deploying Azure Sentinel there, right? How can I monitor my Azure Sentinel logs, right? And how can I see that Azure Sentinel is getting any threat from there, from the open internet, right? So that stuff we are going to cover it there as well. So this is pretty much we are going to cover it in our session, in our training sessions which we planned for this one. Majority of the stuffs we are going to cover it in our for networking, and then majority of the stuffs you will be seeing it for security environment also. Although we are going to touch the base on that uh, admin part also. So that journey which we are going to take it there, right? Initially we'll be starting with the fundamental. Once the fundamental will clear to all, we'll move to that admin. We'll see that some deployment with that admin, because deploying any resources needs that admin part access, right? Admin part knowledge. So once that admin part is done, we'll move to make that connectivity with the network environment with our resources. Once this networking is done, right, you're aware about that, how that network structure is being set up, right? Then we'll move to secure our environment with that threat, right? With any open web tags or any internet threats. So we are going to do that security environment there. So this way, we are going to move that our infra from one environment to the another environment, from one parameter to the other parameter. So if I'll go it here, right? If I'll go in my, again, my PPT sections there. So that's what I pretty much told. Will be touching that fundamental network and the security course here. Some part of that admin part also you are going to cover it here, and then majority of the steps based on the networking and the security aspects. Now, just take a pause here, and I'll just give you a short description, like a short intro on that Azure, like why we are going to tell you that Azure, why we are opting for that Azure. Why, however, like there are other cloud providers also in the market, right? AWS is pretty giant in that field, right? GCP is also coming in a long way. Huawei is also there. Oracle is also there, and then why we are recommending to have that Azure, right? The reason behind that, right? The reason behind that Azure is saying Azure is Azure growth is exponentially, right? Every quarter, they are saying their growth in a in like this trend, right? They are growing like this way. So every quarter they are saying more than 300% of growth, right? And as far as I know, I mean that research which I've done it, right? Azure is one of the quickest, which grabbing that market very quickly. Being a technical company, right, to provide the different integration with the different resources. Nowadays, bigger companies are pretty much going on the Azure environment, and they are preferring more Azure cloud compared to that other cloud environment there, right? And the security and that integration is the one of the backbone factor which is uh, taking that Azure way ahead compared to the other one. So now, as I talked, right, there is a cloud delivery models are there, right? If I'm saying it cloud delivery model, when you run your application, right, on the on-prem infra, right, when you run your application on the on-prem infra, you should be you should be only supposed to manage that networking, right? If anything, any routing switching, any route you need to provide, you need to divert your traffic to the firewall, right? A network admin will be there, and that network admin is going to make that, it's his responsibility to make that networking setup, right? A network should up and it should be up and running, right? So that's what on-prem guy will be doing it. You need to also manage that storage. You need to store that logs, and you need to make sure that application storage should be up and done. Servers also, if any virtual machine, let's say any VM server, any app server, or any database server is running it, right? So for database we should be having DB admin. For app base we should be having that app admin. So all that on-prem person is going to manage there. Virtualization, if you're running in your environment, that also you're supposed to manage that. Operating related system, right? OS related things, right? If any vulnerabilities coming into your on-prem infra, right? If any flaws you find it to your on-prem infra, it's the on-prem person responsibility to make that remediated, right? All that stuff the on-prem guy will be going to do it there. And if any middleware you're working it, right? Let's say I'm any proxy I'm doing it. So this is my environment coming from the internet, right? And I'm putting some proxy as a reverse proxy or forward proxy, and then I'm sending my environment to my backend application where exactly that my application has been deployed, right? So that middleware, that proxy stuffs also, or that middleware person, right? It's on-prem person's responsibility to manage that stuffs. A runtime of my application is also your on-prem guy supposed to be managed. Data related compliance and data related storage part also, that person is going to be managed, right? On the top of the hierarchy, that application, if any application, whether it's a .NET, Node.js, Java or Python, whatever that code you're using it, right? It's application team's responsibility to make that everything up and running, right? If anything happened to that any of that environment, right? That on-prem person should be capable of handling those things here, right? So that's what we see, right? If any priority call got open, right? We see sometime that connectivity is not happening it here, right? Sometimes that storage is happening some issues, right? Sometimes this application is happening some issues, right? And then we see downtime, or we see that P1 call gets open, and then we go there, every team go there and then shout out the issue, right? Now when you move that infrastructure, when you move your environment, right, from on-prem to the cloud, on-prem to the cloud, right? Now there are three different services which Azure is going to provide you. One is infrastructure as a service, which is IaaS service based. Then we are going to see platform as a service, and then we are going to software as a service. What does it mean? Infrastructure as a service, right? If you deploy any infrastructure, let's say I deployed one virtual machine, right? I deployed one virtual machine which comes as an IaaS there, right? If I'm doing that infrastructure as a service deployment, then instead of managing all that stuff from top to bottom, right, what should be I only worrying about these things, right? Application, let's say that IaaS servers which you configured on that virtual machine, you should be managing that data also, you should be managing it there. Runtime, middleware, operating system, you should be managing it there. Then What about these things, right? These things, the light blue which you're seeing it, right? Whether it's a networking, storage, server, virtualization, you don't have to worry about that, right? Any networking expert say, let's say I configure that virtual machine and I want that it should go on the internet, right? So Azure will take care of that routing stuff. You don't have to worry about that. So that's what infrastructure as in services uh, cloud is offering it, right? Now let's say if any banking customer or any customer who does not want to give you that networking of your environment, right? So that level of takes also you can get it with that cloud environment, right? So within the infrastructure as a service, you can get many more things in that. Now what you said, I have that application and data with me, right? Application code I have with me and data is also with me, but I don't know, I mean, other specs I don't know, like how can I do that, right? So in that case, Azure is going to provide you all that steps. It's going to provide that infrastructure. It's going to provide that storage capabilities. It's going to provide it virtualization. It's going to provide that OS related things also, runtime related things also. You just need to bring your code and your data where exactly the data is placed, and then all of that things get ready. Your entire application, you can see it's going to be working now. So all that steps, if anything happened to these component, right? Azure is going to take care of that. They have that high availability of 99.95% basis on that SQs we are going to opt it. But all that capabilities, right? If anything goes happen, I'll show you that what 99.99% means here. But if any issues happen with these things, right? Azure is going to take that responsibility of. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Now you're saying I do not have that application code, I do not have the data, but I want to access application to make my environment accessible, right? Then what software as a service will do? Everything Azure is going to provide you, right? And you can use that software as a your in your environment. So like you're saying that in your companies or in your organization, you must have seen that SharePoint, right? We put our data, we put our every files and structure in that SharePoint, right? Or that Outlook, you have seen it, right? MS Office, you have seen it, right? All that steps we use that MS Office, all that infrastructure, all that services, all that software as in services, right? So if anything happened to this thing, right? Anything happened to the SharePoint, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to do anything on that one. Azure is going to work on that, and they are going to provide you a remediation of that issues. So all that we call it as in software as a service, which software your cloud service is going to provide, and you being a consumer consuming it, right? So here SharePoint, I'm that consumer, I'm consuming that services, and it's provided by the Azure environment. So that's about cloud delivery model here. This is applicable with all cloud environment, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, right? They provide three level of services: infrastructure as a services, PaaS, which is platform as in services, and then SaaS as in software as in services. So that's what they do it here. Now, why I'm saying it Azure, right? Why I'm recommending to go with that Azure and opt for the Azure, right? If you look at this reason, right, it's growing very rapidly, right? The Azure is having their revenues getting increased, and they are increasing their regions, increasing their data centers, increasing their availability zone. As of now, they have their presence in more than 140 countries with 60 regions, two availabilities, 200, more than 200 services, in which they are also offering IoT services, right? Platform services, and then infrastructure services, and then software as in services also. So more than 200 services available to us within that 140 countries, and then more than 60 regions. All the regions which are saying it, right, across the world, Azure have their presence, whether it's in Australia, Europe, US, Asia, they, you name it, and that Azure have their data centers and their presence there, right? They also provide, apart from that, in a worldwide, they also provide as an AD government, AZ government, which like is capable in a China North and some other regions also. So that also Azure is going to provide you there, and it's uh, very vast in a regions that they are going to set up is there. So this country's count is increasing day by day, right? And the revenue growth for that Azure is also going to increasing in a day by day. And when it's come to the technologies, when it's come to the security on the Azure cloud, they have very high level of security in their environment. They provide the different uh, security components like the DDoS and load balancer capabilities, all that aspects, right? Which makes them differ from that other environment, right? They have that storage account, which is like a backbone for that Azure services, right? It's offer a umbrella of services within a storage account. You can store any data inside that, right? So just an example for that, but you have many more services, more than 200 services Azure is going to provide them. Now it's time to see some demo part, right? We have that covered that course content. We have gone through some basic introduction on the Azure side. What is that delivery models, right? Now it's time to go some demo for that. So what I'm going to do it there as a part of the demo today, I'm going to deploy my custom application, right? I do have my custom application. I'm going to deploy that custom application ABC, whatever that I have it there. I'm going to deploy my custom application behind the load balancer. So what happened if I'll show you that architecture which I'm going to do it today? This is going to be my architecture for today, right? If you see that, uh, if you see it right, I have three virtual machines. I have three virtual machines which is deployed on the Azure cloud, and they have their IS services configured, right? So I'm going to provide some snippet of the code in my virtual machines, right? And then these virtual machines, all that. So I'll be going to deploy skill set, which means VMSS, which is virtual machine skill set. It means I'm just going to deploy one VMSS, and it's going to ask me how many VMs you want to, how many instance of that VMSS you want to deploy. So if I'll say I'm going to deploy two VMSS, right? Then two VM is going to be configured at the back end of my virtual machine. And then I can provide my code there. I can provide my script there, right? Now automatically, and then after this is done, right? This infrastructure, this virtual machine deployment is done. I'm going to deploy this is load balancer. It's my L7 layer load balancer. L7 load balancer, we call it as a WAF also, right? We can introduce the capabilities of the WAF, which is web application firewall. I can do my path-based routing here. What does it mean? So let's say I have this xyz.com, right? This xyz.com is my application, right? And I'm saying this xyz.com application is there. And I'm trying to reach out to xyz.com/video. This is my one path. At the same time, I want to reach out to that xyz.com/audio. This is my second path, right? So that path-based routing, right? How it going to that application load balancer, right? That application gateway, how it's going to segregate itself from that. When the traffic is coming for the video, it should divert that particular instance to that video part. When the traffic is coming for that audio, how it can divert to that audio part. So that capabilities and many more capabilities, you are going to get it with that application gateway. We are going to see in a more detail, but yeah, we can do that. I can place my VM on which I configured my IS server behind my load balancer, right? And this is my internet. So from there, right? If let's say you are generating or I'm generating that request, so my request from that internet, it will reach out to my request from the internet, it will reach out to that application gateway. Application gateway will see, okay, this request is coming for xyz.com, right? xyz.com, and then it will divert that traffic to this particular instance or in a round robin way. Which does it mean? So first it will see send this to a request to this one, and then second it will go here, and then third it will go here, and then again in a round robin 4, 5, 6. So this way, all of that resources which is behind my application gateway will going to get the equal number of requests or equal number of load traffic from there, right? So that's what we are going to see today in a demo section, right? Apart from that, right? Let's say if I bring down any issues happen with one of my instance, right? Like say this instance is not working. I found that this instance is having some issues, or this instance goes down, right? Then only this instance is there. Then what application gateway will do, it will stop forwarding the traffic here. It will only forward the traffic to this part. Automatically, that algorithm application gateway will run, and it will see, okay, this instance is not available anymore. I just need to forward the traffic to this particular instance. Now, if let's say anything happened to this instance also, these both instances down. Now my no backend is available. My entire backend is down, right? And now this person is trying to reach out to that backend of my services, and I'm working on rectifying what issue happened to my this virtual machines which is running it here, right? And during that time, I want that my customer should not get that gateway timeout or gateway not available, right? So I can configure some mock response here. I can configure some mock response on my application gateway, and I can send it to my user. Let's say, hey, uh, we are running in a maintenance, right? So we'll check it after this time or check it after this much of time. So that mock response, I can send it to my user, so that user will get a good impression instead of getting that your entire backend is down. So all the steps of capabilities we are going to see it there. So now going further, let me go to my Azure portal and log in it there. So I'm inside my Azure portal here. So I'm going to configure my virtual machine skill set. So inside this global filter, right, global search bar, I'm going to type that virtual machine skill set. And then we need to select this feature here, right? This virtual machine skill set is differ from that virtual machine, right? How it's going to be differ? Because in a virtual machine skill set, right, you just configure one virtual machine and basis on your lead. So let's say at a time, this person is generating a 10 requests. It's very minimal request. Then this person is generating a 10 requests per second, right? And my resource at the VMSS is configured in such a way, right? It can handle 100 requests per second. But all of a sudden, what happened? Another user came in a picture, or another user came in a picture, and they all started generating the request. Now, all of a sudden, this VMS is starting saying that instead of 100, they started saying that 1K requests, 1000 requests per second, right? Now, this VMS is only capable of handling the 100 requests, right? So, in that case, automatically, without no intervention of mine, it will going to spin out a horizontal scaling. It's going to spin out a new instances of your VM. So now previously only one VM was taking the traffic. Now it's a three VM. This is also taking the traffic. This is also taking the traffic. So this VMSS configuration, right, automatically basis on your load configuration, which is coming it, right, it's going to increase that load. It's going to increase that number of instances running at the backend, right? So that horizontal scaling automatically is going to be happen. And if you want to configure, right, I'm saying it, I want to configure, like, let's say one instance should get 50%, other two instances should only go 10% or 20%. So that thing also I can do it via scaling up and scaling out policy, scaling up and scaling in policy. So that stuff also you're going to cover it. You're going to see it in that Azure. So many more features and many more functionalities Azure comes with. It's just the one example of that one of VMSs. So now let's go and configure that VMSs there. If I'll click on create here, so we all know, right, to configure any resource, right, we need to configure one Azure resource group. So it's like it's a logical aggregation of a resource, right? So whenever you configure any resource, whether it's a PaaS base, SaaS base, or IaaS base, right, you have to configure. It's a mandatory thing. You have to configure a resource group. So this is my resource group. Inside this resource group, right, I can configure multiple stuffs, multiple resources there. Let's say I want to configure my VNet, I can do that. I want to configure my VM, I can do that. I want to configure my storage account, I can do that, right? But this resource group is mandatory to have it, right? So we need to provide that resource group, we need to create that resource group there. It's very easy to create the resource group. I can go and type the resource group here and then create the resource group from here, or I can quickly create it from here inside the virtual machine skill set. I just need to provide the name here. I'm just providing the demo one here for this demo. Demo 5, I'm providing it here. Now, this virtual machine skill set name, right? What skill set name you're going to provide here for the instance which is going to be run it at the backend. So let's say I'm providing the same name, demo 5, right? Now, you can select multiple region basis on your requirement. You have many regions here, right? East US, West US, and then in India also Central India, South India, right? You can select any of the region. I'm going to select the Central India here. This availability zone, right? You can see that 3 different availability zone is going to be provided by that Azure. It's a easy 900 concepts, but just to summarize, just to give a quick glance here, right? Let's say Azure availability zone is a collection of data center. Azure availability zone is a collection of data center. So what happens if you have your resource running in this data center, right? Let's say I'm creating my VMSs inside that, right? I'm creating this VMS inside it. So anything happened to this VMSs and I have not configured this availability zone to that my environment, right? Then this entire data center of, let's say, any disaster happened to this data center, right? This VMSs won't be accessible to me. Now, when I configure that availability zone, what happened? This VMS is going to have a replica in some different region. I configured this in a East US. So East US will have the zone peering. They have the zone replications kind of stuffs, which we are going to cover in our sessions, in our training session. But so East US is going to see their replication in a West US. So whatever the things you are doing, going to do it here, right? All that is going to be replicated in this region, right? And if anything happen, any disaster happen to the East US region, the soon, quickly that West region will come, and then it will act as a primary reason for your active for your resources which is deployed there, right? So all that stuff is going to be same with the ticks of switch there. So I'm not going to select anything for my availability zone for this demo section. Now this orchestration mode which you are seeing it, right? It's a flexible or uniform, right? What does it mean? If you want to deploy the identical VMs, right? Anyhow, we are going to deploy that virtual machines. It's a set of VMs we are going to deploy. So it's asking whether you want to deploy it identical virtual machines, or you want to do it like in a stateless workload, right? So I'm saying it, no, go it with the flexible part. And like if you're deploying one virtual machine with a one resource type, one SKUs type, go and deploy the other one in the same one. So I'm going to select this one as in flexible here. Security type, if you want to see do any recommendation, any vulnerabilities there, for that I don't need it. I'm just selecting the basic part here. This is what I was saying it, right? Scaling mode, scaling out, scaling it, right? If you want to put some uh, capabilities, right? Let's say I'm saying 3 virtual machines running at the backend as a part of VMSs, and I want that one of them should get 90% of the traffic and two of them should only get 5%, 5%. So that's thing I can configure in my scaling mode. Number of instance count, how many VMs you want to configure at the backend. For now, I'm saying it only 2. I just put 2 only. So 2 instances is going to be ready there. Now, what is that image you are going to use it, right? Because that virtual machine is again going to underline infrastructure. We're going to deploy it there. And then what is that OS image you are going to use it? There are multiple images you can use it, right? Whether it's a Windows base, OS base, CentOS base, right? Ubuntu base, you can select whatever you want to do it here. There are multiple in the marketplace. You'll see many images, right? Predefined templates are there, right? You can see how so many images templates are there. For this demo, let me select this Ubuntu here. I'm going to select the Ubuntu 2.2, 22.04. Like the way we have in our desktop and laptop VM architecture, Windows 64 and AMD, right? This way is also providing that. So I'm selecting the 64. Now I'm selecting the size of my virtual machine, right? So that size is again SKU based, right? It's a way to generate the revenues from that from the customer, right? If I'm going to use that 2 core of CPUs, right, with 8 gigs of memory, the same like we have that RAM and that CPU in our laptop or in our desktop, right? That same way, this VM is also going to have 2 CPUs and then 8 gigs of memory here. And now you can see it, right? If I'm running my VM 24 into 7, right? Every 24 hours, my VM is running it, right? Then the estimated cost, which is going to be, it's like somewhere is 6K rupees monthly, right? But this not that the fixed price, right? It's not that upfront cost you need to pay. What I mean by the upfront cost is like if you're utilizing any resource, right? If you're utilizing any resource, you don't have to pay this much of the value at once. It depends like how many times, how many resource is being utilized from the cloud infrastructure. So let's say this VM, right? I used it for today and then I make it shut down. I shut down it, right? Then it's only going to charge me for the duration of my VM is getting used. So we call it as a pay as you go part price, and then other one as a upfront cost. It's not the upfront cost. If I'm utilizing in a my way, the cost is going to be very less here. So this is what they are saying it here. If I'll move in a next part, I need to provide that password and the keys also. I can go in a both way. Either I can provide that. One second.
Hi, Sumit, we lose you actually. We are not able to hear.
Okay, let me once. I'm just okay. Give me a second. I'm just trying to do something.
Okay, okay.
So what I'm going
And
to
you
do it
can
here,
also
right?
change the size of your marker when you are writing the things, they are coming very big.
Okay, okay,
It
sure.
is it is just above to your delete, right? There is a the second one. Just delete, go there. Yeah. Go above, yes. Go above one step more. Yeah. And select the second one. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. So I can provide an authentication type, right? Whether I want to go with the so if I need to log into my laptop, right, I need to provide some username and the password there, right? The same way, I'm saying it either I can authenticate myself via public key or I can authenticate myself via password. So for this demo, I'm going to authenticate with my password here. So I need to provide that username here. So let's say I'm providing the Azure admin, easy admin here, and then password also I'm going to provide it there. So I provided that username and the password here. And now we can go in a next part. This spot VM, right? If you're opting for that spot, it means you're reserving that instance from the Azure environment, right? So it's going to cost you less if you're reserving it for 1 day or 2 day. Basis on that, it's going to cost you. But I'm not going to select it. I'm just saying it only spot VM for me now, right? And then rest of the stuffs, if you see, right, I'm giving the distribution here, which I told you, right? 100% I'm giving to all my VM, which is running it, right? So all the 3 VMs or the 2 VMs, which is going to spin it out, they are going to see one by one traffic to all of them. Now, but I must have to provide some disk space to my virtual machine. Now for here, I'm going to select that for this demo, I'm going to select the standard hard disk. If you can select the premium as well, but the cost is going to on a higher side. You're just going to storage part, right? Like if you have in your laptop SSD, right, that process is 2 gig, right, compared to that standard hard disk, right? So that's all we depended on that cost part also. So I'm going to select the standard HDD here, and that key management, right? Anything like you want to store your key or management or key or secrets there, right? You can use that platform managed keys, and then other one as a customer managed key. So Azure is providing these two features. Either you can bring your own key. So let's say I am a banking customer, right, and I want that all that key management should happen on my behalf. I don't want to give it to my cloud to manage that key management, right? So I can bring my own keys and I can select the customer managed key. But for here, let me select that platform managed key. I don't want to do anything there. If I want to attach any new disk, I can create and attach there. In the networking section, right? So you see there a virtual network is getting created, right? A virtual network is automatically getting created. Why? When I said, right, if you remember, it's a PaaS based, IaaS based, and SaaS based service, right? So when I create a virtual machine, right, this virtual machine is a IaaS based service. It's an infrastructure as in software. This IaaS based service, whenever you're going to deploy any IaaS service, right, they need to have some kind of IP addresses. They need to have some kind of IP addresses there. IP address is assigned to there, right? Now, to assign that IP address, right, they must need to create inside the VNet. So it's VNet like, if I need to create one VM here, so this is my VNet. Just think about this is my VNet here, right? Now VNet, what will do? I'll provide some address range, right? If you remember in our on-prem infra, you provide that IP addresses, the segmentation, the subnetting, right? The same way, I'm going to provide this IP address to my VNet, which is very huge, right? It's going to be cover like 65K IPs here, right? It's very big subnet now. So what I'm going to say, right? Instead of going for this big subnet, I'm going to divide it into a multiple smaller segment within that VNet, right? So this VNet is a bigger room. Now I'm creating a small room in my VNet. I call it as a subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3. Now I can break this bigger subnet, right, into a smaller one. So let's say I just need 254 IPs here on this subnet one. So what I can do it here, I can break this into 10.0.0/24. Now it's going to have that 24 254 IPs there. I can assign this IP to my this segment here, right? Now this IP is going to be assigned it here. Now, if any resource is going to be deployed inside that VNet to a subnet, right? Any resource we are deploying it, we are going to deploy it inside the subnet within that VNet, right? So this virtual machine skill set we are going to deploy, it's also going to deploy inside that subnet here. Now this should get some IP. So let's say this VM is getting 10.1.1.1. This is not my subnet, but let's say this IP is getting 10.1.10.00.1. This subnet, this IP is got it, right? So now since we are not having any VNet or the subnet here, Azure automatically created one VNet named or demo 5 VNet, right? So that's what they are doing it there. And then when the resource will get created, right, we'll go there and we'll see that subnet is our default subnet is going to be created there with that Azure part. Right now here they are asking you want to put this virtual machine skill set behind the load balancer. there are few types of the load balancer they are opting it. This is the load balancer which works on the L4 layer, which means it will take that port into consideration, whether it's a TCP traffic or UDP traffic. Basis on that, it divert the traffic there. And then there's another one which is application gateway. It's a load balancer, L7 load balancer, right? It will take the traffic of the HTTP, HTTPS, URL based path routing, SSL termination, right? All that persistence profile, and then web application firewall. So in that case, in this demo, I'm saying it, go put my application, put my VM scale behind my application gateway, right? Now they're saying there is no application gateway existing, right? I can create one here. It's very simple to create it here, but there are many functionalities, there are many terminologies which we need to see it inside that application gateway, which I'm going to see it there, tell you in a while. So let me put that application gateway, app gateway for this one. And I need to provide some rule name, right? Why this rule name? I'll tell you in a while. Let me provide that rule name, rule one, and I'm selecting that port and 80 and protocol as an HTTPS, because I do not have any certificate, right? If I'll select that HTTPS, I need to provide the certificate also, right? Which I don't have with me. So I'll select that HTTP here and I'll click this. Now going to the next here, I'll put everything as it is here, right? I'll put everything. I'm not going to select anything here. And now this is Defender for Cloud, right? Which we talked about. The recommendation and the security vulnerabilities, we are going to get it. It's going to tell me that your subscription is already enabled with that. It's a CISSP, right? It's a CSPM, posture management of that cloud environment. So CSPM is already enabled for me. You want to enable that boot diagnostic. If anything happened to your VMs, you can go in a, see, like the way we go in a consoles, right? I can go in my consoles and then check that boot diagnostic logs from there. So let me disable for now, right? I don't want that. And then rest of the things I'm going to select as it is. Now in a health, right? They're asking me how you're going to monitor the health, right? From the load balancer, how it's going to be monitored that health. So I can configure that manual path of that. But here, what I'm saying it, the protocol will be HTTP, and then it's going to be port on 80, right? Go and select on the root domain path. What does it mean? So let's say my VM has been configured, right? My VM has a path of VM has a path of xyz.com, right? And I configured my services behind that as in, let's say I'm configured as a hot tier, right? And then my application has been configured here, right? So instead of going to that subdomain here, right? What I'm saying it here, after xyz.com, select this root domain as a path to verify domain if this VM is up or not, right? So that's what I'm configured as a root domain here, and I'm not configured as a subdomain because my application has been configured in this root domain. I'll select that next. Now, if I'll go in a here in the uh, down here, right? I can provide my custom data, right? I can provide custom data here. What I mean, I can provide some level of scripts, some sort of script. So my manual code, which I have with me, right? I can put it there, and then my application can come up, right? And will take that code, this VM virtual machine, right? Whether it's a 2 or 3 virtual machines, which is there, right? It will take that code, which I'm providing inside my custom data. So let's say I'm providing that any xyz.com or that code, which I have written it here, right? I'm providing it here, right? Once this virtual machine skill set is up and running, right? This automatically is going to be configured inside my virtual machine. Application has automatically is going to be configured inside my virtual machine by using that custom data, right? So that's what I'm going to do it there. I'm going to provide some custom data part here, custom script here, which I prepared it. Let me provide that custom data. One second, let me bring out that code and provide it here. So I'm using a bin bash script, which I prepared, right? So I'm going to use the same code there. Let me bring back my screen again. So I've copied one custom script which I prepared it here. It's not doing it. It's just working as a lift and shift application. I configured a basic Python application there. I've taken the zip file on that open source, and then I configured that scripts, and it's going to give me that modification name, a lift and shift application, where I can mark my application as an healthy or unhealthy, right? The code is not a concern here. The code is not a point of discussion, but yeah, I'm just prepared this and I put it here. Tag also very important thing you can provide, right? Let's say going further, you have hundred of resources, right, or thousand of resources running in your virtual machine, running in your Azure cloud, right? And now at one point you reach out to that you reach out to that uh, your management telling it, right, hey, we are getting too many costs on the Azure cloud, right? We are getting thousands of dollar in that Azure environment, right? We certainly need to reduce some cost there, right? Then what you can do, you can provide the tags there, right? So let's say I provide one tag here in environment base, right? You can provide customized tag based on your requirement, and I'm saying it, this resource belongs to dev, right? And now either I'm creating it, I tell them this resource belongs to that prod environment, right? Now, if I'll get the cost optimization activity needs to be done it there, right? I can segregate my resource basis on the tag. These are belongs to dev, these are belongs to prod one, right? Now, whomsoever I want to delete, right? Basis on my consumption, basis on my utilization, right? I can use that and I can do that some deletion and reduce my cost here. So cost optimization is also one of the biggest factor nowadays, because deploying that resources on that Azure cloud is okay, but at the same time you need to take that part, right? The cost is the biggest factor, you need to take that. You're also maintaining that cost, you're optimizing your cost as per your company requirement. So that tax is going to be useful in that case. Now I'm going to review and create it. It's running that final validation. It's telling me that the resource, the detail which I provided is correct or not. So now it's done that all the details which I provided, the reason that VM which we have taken it, right? Username and that password, right? All that stays, it's got verified here. Now I'm able to go, I'm going to create this VMSS now. It's going to create that VMSS here. This will take a while. It's just this deployment to be completed, and then we'll see how we can utilize our application behind that application load balancer, right? So it's creating that load balancer. It got created, right? Now I can see everything, right? VNet is also created because multiple resources is going to be created at once, right? Public IP, which is going to be attached to my uh, application gateway, right? All that steps, all the deployment, they are doing it in a one by one. Once this resource is getting completed, right, I can download that template to automate my stuff. So all that stuff I can do it this Azure cloud, and it's very easy to do it here. So whatever the resource we are deploying it on the Azure cloud, right, it won't take that much of time, but depends on that services which are opting it, right? If you're going for VPN gateway, which takes more than 30 to 40 minutes for the deployment, right? Because a reason is going to be acquired for you, right? And then details is going to be provided there, right? So depends on the service to service. It will take some times to have the deployment. But this VMSS is not going to take that much of the time, right? So most of the resources we can see it's got created. If I'll go in my all resource to see what all resources so far got created now. So I can see that app gateway got created, public IP got created, NSE which attached to my virtual machine skill set got created, VNet which is that virtual network also got created. So if I'll go in a application gateway, meanwhile other resources getting created, right? This is my This is my application load balancer, which is L7 load balancer, right? If you see it here, I have the WAF capabilities. I can provide my backend pools, which means that backend which is running. In our case, this backend is, in our case, the backend which we are running it is VMSs. So that VMSs configuration is here, right? I can provide that backend setting, which means how I'm going to this VMSs which I configure, right? How I'm going to make sure that VMSs, the setting which is there, that application which is configured, right, on this VMSs is there or not. So that backend setting I can use for that part. Front-end IP configuration, a public IP or private IP, right? Both is going to be assigned to your, if you want to assign only public IP, you can do that. If you want to assign that private IP, you can do that. So to access your application, right? I'm not going to access my VMSs. I'm going to access my application load balancer, and then application load balancer will take that traffic to that VMSs there. So to access that, you need to have some public IP, right? I'm not using the domain name here because that domain name I need to do that whitelisting and all that. I'm not using it. Again, to put that private link service, use that application as an within Microsoft backbone network. You can do that, right? You can use that private link services there. Listener is something on which the traffic is going to be reach you. So what does it mean? If I'll tell you on this PPT, right? The PPT which I showed you. If I'll go here, so what happened on this one, right? What happened this one? This application load balancer, which we are configuring here, right? It will take the traffic from the internet on the front end side. We call it as a listener. We call it as a listener. It will take the traffic from the front end, right? Now, after doing that algorithm, after doing that analysis there, it will see, okay, my rules and is configured to take the traffic from the front end and send it to the back end, right? It will see that rule has been configured. It will see if that backend which we have configured is up or not. That health probe, we call it as a health probe to configure on the load balancer, and then backend pool on which my this backend application has been configured, right? So after that analysis, all that algorithm, it will send the traffic to that backend, and then backend will respond back. Application gateway will take it back, and then will send that via internet to that user. So that way, the flow is going to be happen, right? That way, that flow you're going to see it there. Now, let me see quickly if other resources are got created. Yeah. Now my VMS is every steps is created now, right? Now, if I'll go in app gateway here, if I'll go in app gateway, see this is my VMSS. If I'll go in this where and type that VMSS to see my VMSS created or not, this is my VMSS. And now how many instance of count we are running it? 2, right? Let's just see, and that instance is still creating, right? So that VM is creating. The distance of that VMSS is not created yet. It's in a creating state. So once this instance is going to be created, we are going to access our application, and we'll see. See, one of the instances got created now. Once this instance is going to be created, right? Both the instances created now. Let me go in application gateway and take my application gateway public IP, and from there try to access that, right? So this is my application gateway public IP. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it there. And now you'll see that application still giving the bad gateway. It means it's not accessible, right? Why? Because this application gateway is not able to identify that if health probe has been configured or not, right? See, there is no health probe, right? Because we provided the details in that application gateway for our VMSs, but we have not provided the health probe details. We're going to see that all the steps. So I'm going to mention, quickly create that health probe here. And then we'll provide that root path here. And then we're going to add this one. You can also take this IP and you can try it from your end and see if that IP you're trying to access it's accessible or not to everybody. Let me paste that IP in the chat. You can use that HTTP, right? Because we configured our application on the HTTPS. Yeah. paste that to everyone. Given that IP in the chat, you guys can also try it to see that if that application is accessible to you or not. Let me configure that load bal. This application health probe here. Now if we'll go in a backend pool to see my backend health is up or not.
Yes, it is accessible.
Okay. Now if I'll, okay, thanks for that. Thanks for,
Sumit,
yeah.
please
So
be
I
loud
can see.
little bit. Actually, your voice sometime coming as a feeble.
Okay, sure. So now my application is accessible, right? I can see a lift and shift application is accessible on my load balancer IP. This is the same IP which I provided to my load balancer, right? It's just a sample application which I deployed, lift and shift application, current load, unhealthy. I can do that. What I want to do it using that Python app which I provided there, right? So that's what I provided it here. And now my both application, both VM which is running behind my application gateway, right, is up, and they got that IP of 10.0.0.4, 10.0.0.5. Now, if I'll terminate one of the instance there, right, will my application is going to be impacted? No. If I terminate any of the instance here, let's say I'm delocating this resource and I'm stopping this VM. I'm stopping this VM here. And also for a while, my application is not going to be impacted, because that load balancer will see on the back end, okay, this VM is not up, it's down, and my other VM is up. It's taking that reference, right, from the other VM. Now it will send the traffic to that only VM which is existing in your environment. It won't going to send the traffic the other VM which is down. Let's just wait to get this to be deallocated. Right, the VM is stopped now. My application is still accessible. There is no impact on that application, right? So that way you can see that I only running with the one VM, and my application gateway quickly identified that that VM, other VM is stopped, right? But the one VM which is there, now it's sending the traffic to only one VM, right? Earlier it was sending in a round robin way. Now it's sending to the only one traffic. So that skill set features, right? That's kind of skill set capabilities. We are getting it inside that Azure environment along with that application load balancer here. So that's about the demo section. If you guys have like any queries, we are open for that Q&A here now.